Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 141st Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss what has been referred to as the rise of the victimhood culture. I feel like a victim here today. In recent times, the claim of victim status is triggered by what appears to be hypersensitivity to words and actions that may reflect bigotry. The question is, does this culture of victimhood advance or retard the cause of improved civility? Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, a retired senior research chemist. On his left is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Bryan, Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. Ron, leading off with you. We hear from some circles that minority marginalization is at an all-time high. Do you think that occasions of bigotry have increased, or is it simply that claims have risen because of the growth of sensitivity in the victimhood culture?
Yeah. Not much simple about this, John. One of my favorite cartoonists is a man named Berkeley Breathed, and he writes a strip called Bloom County. And one of the characters there is an anthropomorphic penguin named Opus. And they've got their finger on the pulse of social actions. And the other day, Opus shows up with a T-shirt that says, "Offended." So that's kind of symptomatic here. Well, I'm hard time relating to this in a way because I'm a privileged individual, you see, even though I'm over 40.
Do you really feel that way?
I really do. I mean, just look at it here. I'm white, I'm male.
But what are the privileges?
The privileges are I'm white and I'm male.
Well,
and I've had a good education. I grew up in a small town with without a whole lot of contact with people of other, some ethnicities. Yeah, we had a lot of. Yeah, we had a lot of Italians and Polish people around.
Oh no,
but not so much in other races. But so things like that.
All those people had a black mark on their forehead yesterday. Right?
That's true. Yeah, I used to be one of those people.
Yeah, me too.
and still have it. We do that in our church. Yeah. So I didn't last night. So I'm looking back at trying to figure out maybe where this has come from. And it seemed to me that in my own experience, I've never really experienced this kind of interaction or this kind of feeling as being a victim. Looking back at the Vietnam War protests and followed with the civil rights protests, it seems to me that people felt passionately about either a cause that they felt was being subverted, a cause of patriotism, a cause of racism that they felt very strongly about, and it was real. In many cases, certainly it was real. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to me that perhaps that gave an attitude that if I am oppressed in some way, if my group is oppressed, if I personally am oppressed, I have the right and privilege to stand up to that and to protest it. Mm-hmm. And does that improve or decrease, increase or decrease the cause of civility? I can see that it does both ways. If we're in an altercation with someone, if someone is approaching us as putting us down because of what we are and who we are and what we belong to, then we have an opportunity to try to engage that person, and if we're civil about it, get into a civil discussion about that, perhaps. Some people it's hard to do. Mm-hmm. As I've said before, I have personally had some problems with forgiving folks in occasions. So it's kind of hard to do that. And I tend to avoid confrontation if possible. Yeah. So I think maybe there's a whole progression here. Yeah. And it has evolved, and in some ways it's good, in some ways it may not be.
Patty, where are you coming from on this topic?
In the past we have discussed the effect of different words upon people and words that are considered offensive and are offensive. And I've always been a believer that if someone is offended by a term, that I should not use that term. And of course there have been many that have been used in the past that are extremely egregious and were said in order to demean an entire class of people or a group of people or an ethnicity or a religion. We've gotten to the point, though, that it seems that everything is offensive, and you have to watch every single word that you say for fear that it's going to offend someone. And unfortunately, we have people that take advantage of the fact that they want to be the victim, perhaps because of all of the use of cell phones and YouTube and the 24-hour news cycles, that everybody takes a picture of everything, and then it's put online so that everyone can see how awful this situation is, and then they can start drawing sides and become the victim. Recently, we've had so many cases too where people have used that victimhood status to obtain fame or perhaps to make money off of the issue. We had the recent case with Jussie Smollett, the actor from Empire, who claimed that he was attacked because he was black and because he was gay. Couldn't have been farther from the truth. I mean, he set the whole thing up himself. He had his friends stage an attack, and he said that he did it for the fame and for the money. That's really scary, because that tends to make you look at cases where someone is a victim, and then you always question, well, are they faking it or not? Mm-hmm. You have the case of the whole Covington issue, which I very honestly think everyone behaved badly. You had that original group, and I can't even think of their name, but I know they're prominent in New York City, that are very far to the left and attack conservatives that were shouting very profane comments to this group of students that are standing there. Mm. You have a Native American group that comes over and wants to intervene to calm things down because the Covington group are yelling school cheers and yelling back at them. I frankly blame the adults that were the chaperones in that group who should have said, listen, let's not say anything, let it go. And then you have a student who stands in front of the Native American, and by the way, he was stopped from getting away from that student, smirking at him the whole time. Had this not been taped or put on YouTube, had not been on somebody's cell phone, they would have walked away and thought nothing of it. But instead, you end up with this big national crisis, and now all of a sudden that young man is suing the Washington Post for $250,000 for reacting to a $250 million, which is ridiculous because he's become such a victim.
But he's also become famous.
Oh, and he's become famous because of it. And even his diocese had originally attacked him because they said the original photos showed one side, then you got more.
Yeah.
But we have this war on everything now. There's a war on Christmas. There is a war on Christianity. There's a war on everything. And it's really, truly gotten out of hand. We had the recent situation out at Berkeley where the conservative, who was, by the way, was not a student, he's a member of a group that goes on to college campuses to profess conservative values. Every right to do that, but he's an idiot, comes up to him and punches him. Starts fighting with him and then punches him. And everyone then becomes the victim because of one idiot. And we have to, I think, step back and take a breath here and stop and think, are these isolated incidents or are they situations where somebody really has been victimized?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bryan, where are you on this topic?
Well, I agree with what's been said so far. The problem, it seems, is that everybody's walking around with a chip on their shoulder. And it plays into the victim narrative. And the media has done their best to, I guess, further that narrative with silly things. I don't know if I agree with what happened with the Covington students, but the media ran with that without doing any real reporting. Mm-hmm. They didn't look at the whole video. They didn't look at the whole situation. The gentleman that was beating the drum is a known agitator. He goes around a lot and agitates. He was at a variety of Native American rallies and agitating with the police, and I think they're called the Israelites. I think the Black Israelites or something. It's something Israelites.
That's not his group, though.
No, that's not his group.
That's the group that
That's the
originally
far
started.
left group that started screaming just the vain and vile things at these students who were standing there waiting to get on a bus to go home.
That was so wrong.
And one of them, or several of them, had Make America Great hats. Okay, so the combination of social media, the content that's needed for social media, you know, everybody's carrying around a phone, and everything's recorded. So whoever records it, they throw it up on a social media channel like a YouTube, or they put it on Twitter, and they all of a sudden they claim that they're a victim of something. The latest one was this. I believe he's an editor for one of the online magazines, said that there was a racist scrawling on a toilet in Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. I don't know if you saw this.
I didn't see this.
It was on Twitter. His name is, I think it's David Korn or whatever.
Oh.
And he
Coin.
No, it's corn.
It's
I think.
corn.
It's
Corn.
corn.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
wrong
corn.
guy.
Yeah. And so basically, it was kind of funny. The Sky Harbor Airport has a social media thing, and they said, "Please tell us where that's at, so we can get that off of there." Well, he's fumbling and bumbling, and you know, I believe, this is my opinion, that he made that up. Okay, sort of like the Jussie Smollett thing, you know, with being the victim. So I think if we take a look at the narrative that certain groups are trying to push, that everybody's a victim and there's just no way that you can ever, rid yourself of that victimhood. You're going to play that card. It goes back to Al Sharpton and Tawana Brawley. You know, he sort of perfected the whole victim thing. You find a group that has a problem, and then you just beat that victim, status, all day long. I think I would agree with Patty. We need to take a step back and say to ourselves, is it really as bad as people say it is? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I really don't know. I feel for groups. The latest issues that have come up with a congresswoman saying some very anti-Semitic remarks. Some I didn't understand because I'm not privy to the latest vernacular of the day. But in reading some of her tweets and in reading some of the statements that she's said over the last several years, it's clear that she's anti-Semitic. I mean, there's no doubt that her comments are not meant to foster any sort of understanding or any sort of just a sort of a softening of her tone towards this group of people, Jews in particular. So that kind of stuff we really need to check. I would say this too: for 8 years, we had a president that everybody recognized as the president. I don't recall any, other than the clown that was at a rodeo that had an Obama mask on.
Oh, yeah.
And he was fired, life was ruined, and is living in some cave somewhere because of what he did. I don't recall anybody that was conservative or white nationalist beating somebody up because they were wearing an Obama hat or an Obama t-shirt. I think that's got to stop. I don't believe it helps civility at all. If you're sitting in a restaurant and I see Ron over there with his Greenpeace thing on or his Bernie thing, I have no desire to go over there and cold cock him.
How about if I wear my Obama hat?
Wear it. I would just as soon protect his right or Patty's right to voice their opinion than have somebody walk up and just cold cock somebody in a restaurant or grab their hat or drag them out or scream at them. I don't believe that's not what this is about. That's not what this country was built on.
And it really truly has happened on both sides because we saw it at Trump rallies. I mean, I still remember when the one man was escorted out and the one Trump supporter just got up and cold cocked the guy that was a. Yeah. So I mean, it has happened. It's wrong. It's wrong whether either side.
It hasn't happened as much as the media would have you believe. Okay, the media is feeling the heat of somebody that's playing them, and that's Donald Trump. He is playing the media for the fools that they are, and they're buying it hook, line, and sinker. Instead of stepping back and not reacting to it, they're jumping into it. The Jim Acostas. I mean, I feel like I'm a victim. I was suspended from Twitter for 12 hours. Do you know why?
Why?
I guess recently, with a lot of reporters from BuzzFeed and these news outlets being let go because there's a lack of news and all that kind of stuff, the term that has triggered people, especially them, is learn to code. Learn to code. That's the term that is a trigger term. And there were two reporters that were, and it was a string of tweets that a lot of verified accounts were going at each other. And these two reporters had reported on a lady that is a pastry chef in one of Donald Trump's resorts. And she makes cakes for this group, QAnon or something like that. I don't even know what the group is. And these guys were going back and forth about these two guys writing this about, they're basically trying to ruin this lady's life. She's a pastry chef in one of Donald Trump's, and they're trying to associate her with Donald Trump being a racist. And I tweeted at those two guys, you better learn to code. And I got suspended from Twitter.
What did you mean by that, learn to code?
Learn a different skill. Find a different job. Okay, that's what that means. Learn to code. So, for instance, if you're going to lose your job,
become a computer programmer.
Become a computer programmer. If you're going to lose your job, learn to be a plumber. Learn a different skill set. So, I guess several weeks ago, this learn to code became a term that Twitter had determined was offensive and was harassing people. And so when I put on there, better learn to code, I got suspended. I got a 12-hour timeout on Twitter. Now, I'm a victim, okay? But if we're that far down the road that you can't say something, and I agree with Patty, there's all these terms that we have to, whatever happened to sticks and stones?
Yeah.
But did you see recently that, and I read this somewhere, Donald Trump has signed an executive order saying that for colleges and universities who receive any kind of federal funding, they must allow free speech on campus or they'll lose their funding. So I'm just wondering, when the Church of Satan has to speak at Liberty University, how that's going to get out. Because there are groups that receive federal funding which have very strong social views, social and ethical views that are in a counter to some of these things. And will that be allowed to happen or not? I think it should, personally.
Well, when I hear that it's happened, I'll call you.
Yeah, I think we'll know about it.
I agree with that.
My concern is that the so-called oppressed or the offended person gets to decide what you mean when you say something. I think back about 30 years, a young lady that I knew quite well was in a leadership position on campus at Kent State University. And she was responsible for interfraternity activities and so forth. And that there was a fraternity on campus that was largely made up of, it was entirely African American. And they were complaining that she was not letting them know when activities were taking place. So she met with them, excuse me, met with a group from this fraternity, and she said, but I always let you guys know. And they booed her. And at first she thought she was being booed because she didn't really let them know.
You guys.
She was being booed because she said, you guys.
Yeah.
Now, they decided that she was a racist because she made a racist remark, which was, you guys.
Waitresses use that all the time to my wife and I.
Yes, you guys still working on that?
Yeah. Well, there was something, and this was a little while ago, and I didn't get the full gist of it, but let's say you're in line and the cashier finishes your order and you thank her for that. How is she to respond? Usually when someone says, thank you, you say, you're welcome. But that particular response was considered oppressive because you were, in essence, forcing her or him to recognize your privilege by saying you're welcome.
What?
Yeah, no, that's what I said. I'm like, what are you supposed to say when the server comes to your table and puts your meal down? Thank you very much. And if they don't say it, okay, don't say, but to say you're welcome? I mean, that goes to your point of what words? How far have we gone down the road where you can't
I saw a
thank
button once that
someone?
says, "Don't tell me what kind of a day to have."
Yeah.
And the sad part is it marginalizes those terms that are offensive, that are blatant offensive.
Really?
It marginalizes those people like the King was King, from Iowa. What's his first name? I want to say Stephen, but that's the author, and I don't.
Rodney King?
No, the senator from Iowa, who was sanctioned for the.
Stephen King.
Oh, yeah.
It is Stephen King.
Yeah, the congressman.
The
Yeah.
congressman,
Yeah.
yeah. And, I mean, horrible comments. Roseanne Barr.
Yeah,
I mean, the comments that she made, that was awful. And everyone knows,
Right.
that that's awful.
Right.
But then you have all this other stuff gets thrown into the mix. And you then, tend to think that, oh, maybe I shouldn't have gone that far over.
Yeah.
No, some things are wrong. And unfortunately, I think it's all the cell phones, the Twitter, if you stay, I'm not on Twitter, I am proudly not on Twitter.
Well, I was talking to someone who had a son of theirs was at school in a large metropolitan area, and he used to ride have to ride the subway and then a bus. And the first thing they told him was, don't look at anybody. Don't make eye contact with anybody, because if you make eye contact with someone, that's threatening. You're threatening them. And
Was that in the United States or was that in Japan?
No, that was in the United States. That was in the United States.
Huh.
And so, you don't make, I pretty much, maybe I'm oppressing, maybe I've been oppressing people for many, many years, and I just didn't know it because I look at people and say, hi, how are you today? Whether you're black,
None of your
white,
business.
yeah, exactly.
No, but getting back to the point, though, that we've decided it's okay for me to decide what you mean when you say something.
Yeah.
And if I want to be offended by that, I will just claim the offense.
And I would rather, if I offended someone, I would rather they say, would you please not use that term? This is why I'm offended. Okay, I understand. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. There are ways to handle things civilly without making a big lawsuit out of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. I have a friend who's African American, and he had gone off to some kind of a conference on racism, and he came back all fired up because he learned a whole lot of things that he had been exposed to all of his life, and it never occurred to him they were racist. But he learned at this conference to be offended by these certain things that were. When he told me some of them, I thought, well, that's not offensive. How could you? Well, according to the people at this conference, you should be offended by things like that. It's like you guys. And there are so many things. It makes the white American male, particularly a Republican American male, overly cautious about what you can say to anybody about anything. You can we're accused of being the chief oppressors.
Now we hear that the poor white American male is being marginalized and he is being prevented from doing things because all of the minority groups have risen up and.
Well, we are a minority group. I figured out, you talk about white American male adult Republicans are less than 10% of the population. And we're oppressing the daylights out of the other 90.
That's where your minority status ends, because as far as power, money,
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Ron mentioned being privileged, and I've always had some concerns about this list of white privileges that gets tossed around. And I traced it to a woman by the name of Peggy McIntosh, who wrote this list. She is the head of the Female Women's Studies program. I think it's at Vassar, one of the exclusive Ivy League schools. So I called her, and ask her about it. She said, I never meant for that to be a broadly published list. She said, I just wrote about my own personal experiences. And I started going down the list, and there are so many things on, for instance, a white person can go into a store and feel confident they're not being followed because they might be suspected of being a shoplifter. However, I know. A man from Walmart said, we follow everybody with cameras. We don't pay people to walk around and
But that
check.
has happened in the past.
Oh, I'm sure
Yeah.
that it has.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things on there that have happened in the past.
You know, being as old as I am, I remember going into math classes in college and having a professor saying, and I've said this before, you don't belong in this class, only men belong in this class.
Yeah.
You watch the movie Hidden Figures, which I love that movie, by the way. And the prejudice against the women, the black women that worked
Oh,
with
yes.
NASA.
What a marvelous movie.
Oh, I love that movie. And, you know, they were so strong, so bright, but they were kept in the basement. And because they were both female and black.
But they were extraordinarily gifted
Exactly.
when it came to...
But no one wanted to recognize that.
yeah.
And it has occurred in the past. And, you know, discrimination is there, and we have to fight it. And we're still not.
Well, between now and our next program in 2 weeks, we'll figure out what to do about all that. Thank you very much.